What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
We'll just jump right into it since we're already starting. Daniel Roytas is on the Medicine Girl podcast. I am so grateful for your time this next hour. We're going to talk about my most passionate topic, and that is vitamins, supplements, and sort of the behind the curtain look at what's really going on with the whole industry. So, Daniel, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and telling us briefly just kind of a little bit about your background and how you discovered that maybe vitamins and supplements aren't so wonderful as they seem to be.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Robin. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And yeah, a little bit about my background. I spent 10 years working at various educational institutions around Australia, so teaching undergraduate degree students in natural medicine, nutrition, naturopathic medicine, herbal medicine, these kinds of modalities, and resigned in late 2022 after being questioned about the work I was doing on my own platform outside of work. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me, but it was a long time coming. There were many things that I didn't agree with. Watching how the profession was unfolding and the curriculum that was being taught and the ideologies that were being put forward by so-called leaders in the natural medicine field, I could see that it was basically an insidious destruction of the natural medicine industry, and I could no longer ethically teach a curriculum that I didn't believe in. Resigned and never looked back. Now I'm sharing information with people from my perspective, looking at various different things like vitamins and viruses and the nature of reality and what disease is and what health really is and how to achieve good health. And hopefully there are people out there who hear my message and resonate with it. And hopefully I'm already speaking to a warm audience today, but I'm really excited to get into the conversation with you.
You're speaking to a warm audience. I think, their minds are really open. And I started a Telegram group. The first one I started, I had to close down because there's too much chaos and confusion over vitamins and supplements. And it's almost like they're okay of giving up allopathic medicine, but they need their soft place to fall, which is pharma light or allopathic light, which is the alternative health community. And when I started, how I got into it was I had watched some things from Amanda Vollmer on vitamin D3 right at the first of the pandemic. And here's the way to stay in health and wellness: supplement with vitamin D3 with K2, because it really boosts your immune system. Not that I really agreed with immune system, but I thought, well, why not? And so I gave it to my son, who was 9 at the time, and he broke his shoulder 6 weeks later from a short fall at a skate park. And I was so afraid because I did not want to take him into the medical industrial complex, as I was calling it. And I didn't want him to get an x-ray on a fresh break. I feel like that is radiating a bone that can cause tumors and cancer. So I was kind of in a state of just being torn wide open, looking for solutions. And I went on every possible natural healing remedy place, landed at Jim Stevenson Jr.'s Facebook page. And just my eyes were open. My jaw was on the floor. Like I'd been poisoning my son with rat poison. And deep down inside, I just kind of had that suspicion that these supplements weren't all they were cracked up to be. My mom and my earliest memory is my mom taking handfuls of Shaklee vitamins. It's like this multi-level marketing vitamin company in the 70s. And that's just what she did, to stay in the healthy ones took handfuls of vitamins. So I anchored that in, like, that's just how you stay healthy. And then a few years ago, she kept going back into the hospital with these horrible GI issues, lost all this weight, couldn't gain it. The doctors had no idea what was going on. She'd go to the hospital and get better, go back home, same thing would start, until she had the light bulb moment to stop taking any and all supplements. Hasn't had a problem since, and she's going to be turning 91 in June.
Wow, that's
so
fantastic.
Those two things started me on this quest to really understand what you're saying. How does the human body heal? And
yeah, I think. Sorry, go on.
Well, and just, do we need anything external to stay in health and wellness, or are we interfering with the miraculous capacity of the human body to stay in synergy?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Robin. We don't need anything external. Mother Nature provides everything for us. So when I talk about nature, I'm not just talking about sunlight and water and food and these other things. I'm talking about the things that the human body does itself innately inside us, because we are a part of nature. I know that we tend to look at ourselves as separate to nature, but we're not. So everything is there. It's a perfect system, and we don't need to meddle with it. This idea that we need to stuff around with pills and potions and interventions, I think we're pretty far off the mark there. We've deviated away from the understanding that eclectic doctors and naturopaths had as recently as the early 1900s. We've really deviated away from that, and we're under this impression now that the body is imperfect, it's always doing something wrong, Mother Nature's out to get us, and that we need to interfere with that process. So yeah, it's time for us now to come full circle and reconnect with that lost knowledge. All the answers are there. It's not rocket science. We don't have to go and work all this stuff out for ourselves. It's all there. We've just been disconnected from it. And as I said, now it's time to reconnect.
I agree with you 100%. And that's such a beautiful way to look at it, is that we don't need to go out seeking for the next miracle cure, magic elixir. The interference is what I call, you have to enter into a state of fear. So then you are now interfering with the body's miraculous capacity to synergistically work without you ever having to know how it works. And it's almost better if you don't, because then you're not at as risk for interfering with it. And that's really was going to be my first question to you, is what started you on this course of waking up and really seeing the alternative health community for what it is?
Yeah, green pharmacy.
Yeah.
Natural medicine has essentially become a new arm of the medical industry, big pharma. Yeah. Green pharmacists, green pharmacy, that's sort of another word that people refer to it as, which is just basically the looking at the body similarly to how doctors look at it from a mechanistic point of view. And if somebody's sick, the disease is the problem, the symptoms are the problem. The body has no capacity to basically heal itself, and we can only manage symptoms, or we can use natural medicines to lessen the side effects of certain drugs, and it doesn't really have any place as a primary healthcare profession. Yeah, so I have always sort of been a deep thinker, and maybe around 2014, I really had a massive awakening about certain things, the nature of our reality in the world that we live in. And things had been leading up to that point for quite some time. But that was really the big moment in 2014 where I came across some knowledge that really made a lot of sense to me. And yeah, 2020 was another point in time that I had a big awakening about health. I heard some doctors talking about this idea that you can't catch disease from people. That immediately resonated with me because I heard about this in my undergraduate degree in 2006, 2007. So I knew there was something to it. And due to the nature of my job and my role in the natural medicine industry, giving lots of public talks and lectures and presentations, webinars, seminars, these kinds of things, I knew the question was going to come up. Due to the nature of the world at the time, I thought I better go and research and see if there's any validity to what these doctors are saying. Because when I originally heard about this idea that germs don't cause disease, I discarded it and thought, no, germ theory's been proven. And I approached it from a germ theory, terrain theory duality, where if you don't have a strong enough immune system, the germ will get you. But if your immune system's strong enough, the germ can be there and it doesn't cause a problem. Little did I know I was kind of only halfway right. But 2020 was the turning point for me. I realized that what we've been told about germ theory is incorrect. And that then made me think about what else have we been lied to about, intentionally, unintentionally. Maybe it's a misunderstanding because humans like to try and understand the world they live in. And I think we have an imperfect understanding for one reason or another. We will never have a perfect understanding because it's not for us to know. We have no need to know it. When we live in harmony with nature, these things that we try and work out with science, we can never work out. I think it's a fail-safe mechanism that's been inbuilt into this reality that we live in. It's not for us to know. And then I started using that same way of questioning and looking at things as I did with germ theory to reevaluate basically everything I thought I knew about health and well-being. And one of these things was vitamins and natural medicines. The things that I came across wasn't necessarily new information because I'd heard about some of these things before. For example, that vitamins are all synthetic and they're made by Big Pharma. But I was under the impression that they were creating identical type structures to what's found in nature and it was all above board and yada, yada, yada. But when I had this awakening, I looked at it and went, oh, the same people that are making the drugs are making the alternative. So the people who want the alternative are still getting the same product from the same salesman. And it's just a very clever marketing scheme and marketing ploy to keep people as paying customers for their entire lives. So if they're not taking a drug, well, now we'll get them being a customer by buying vitamins forever,
Right.
Making them luring people into this idea that our food is not enough and that we're always deficient in something, and that the reason why you get a deficiency disease is because your food is adulterated or it's not being grown properly. You're lacking something and you need to take something to fulfill that deficiency, when in fact I don't think there are anything called deficiency diseases at all. So yeah, lots of paradigm shifts for me, and I'm continually learning and updating my knowledge. I don't claim to be 100% correct on anything. If new information presents itself, I will update my knowledge accordingly, but this is where I am currently.
Well, and that's what we call an open mind. And those of us that I think that have an open mind are the most dangerous because you can't convince us of anything. I mean, I think they figured out you can convince either side with a piece of paper. You know, here's peer reviewed, here's your studies, but it's just a piece of paper that can be manipulated. Whereas what I'm looking at is what my eyes see, getting back to trusting my wisdom and my senses and what seems to be awry. Like when all of my patients on my caseload were deficient in vitamin D, from the guy that got this shoulder surgery that was a surfer to the 80-year-old bedridden woman, have the same vitamin D levels. I thought that seems strange. That seems strange that every single one of my patients is on a vitamin D supplement. That seems strange that, the test shows everyone abnormal until you take the drug. And then it's like, oh, bingo, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a chemical that changes a lab value to tell you, look, it's working. Meanwhile, your health is deteriorating. Your hair is falling out and you can't remember your name, but the lab values say, hey, it's working.
That's right. Yeah, the vitamin D issue is a big one, and it's probably something that a lot of people can relate to because many people take it.
Yeah.
Now we're under the impression that the sun is dangerous. So this is a story that we've been told to fear the sun. And because of that, people spend less time outdoors in direct sunlight. And the ill health consequences of not getting enough sunlight are then attributed to a deficiency in vitamin D.
Right.
Now, I have some fundamental issues with that because we're under the impression that the vitamin D is the thing that's having the beneficial effect in the body. I don't believe it's the thing having the effect in the body at all. The thing that's having the effect is that big ball of light that we can see up in the sky. It is the light that is having the beneficial effect. Now, people might hear this and go, oh, you're crazy. It causes the vitamin D. But even now, in the literature, this is starting to be admitted by scientists in this field that, we got it wrong. It's not the vitamin D, it's the light. The light has beneficial effects far above and beyond anything vitamin D could have. It's got, I think, around 3 dozen, from what I understand, there may be more, but around 3 dozen effects on the human body. This is light I'm talking about here from the sun. Whereas vitamin D has a handful of effects. Now, they've never proven that it's the vitamin D having these effects. They've only really done association studies. So they're saying, look, when the level goes up, we see that their disease prevalence goes down. But actually, when you look at the levels of sun exposure, that seems to be the thing that's having the effect on the human being rather than the vitamin D. Now, for people to wrap their heads around what I'm saying here, is I use this analogy, you may have heard it before. If you go camping and it's like a cold winter's night and you have a fire and you sit by the fire, that's the thing that keeps you warm. That's the thing that keeps you alive. It's the fire. The next morning you wake up and the fire's out and there's ash on the ground. Now, the ash is the evidence that the fire was there. You can't then gather up that ash, put it in a bottle, and then that night, when it gets cold again, sprinkle the ash around your campsite and huddle around it and try and expect it to keep you warm. Because it's not the ash that has the effect, it's the fire. So we can draw an analogy here between fire and the sun and the ash and the vitamin D. So the vitamin D is the evidence that you've been exposed to sunlight. And again, like this happens basically with almost every aspect I look at in health, is that what is the actual truth has been flipped 180 and we're under this this illusion of what's really going on. We have this warped sense of reality simply by attributing the effect as the cause.
Right.
And that causes confusion, and then we're forever chasing our tail with these things. So what that tells us is that you don't need to take a supplement because it's not the supplement having the effect, it's the sun. So what's the answer? Get outside and get more sunlight.
Get outside and get more sunlight without sunscreen and, of course, without sunglasses. That was another one that I was realizing we're interfering with our body's miraculous design by blocking the receptors in your eye, which communicate to your skin to either open or close the skin cells or the pores or whatever these synergistic reactions. Again, like I believe we will never, ever, ever comprehend everything that's going on, except for that when you don't interfere and you're out there in the sunshine without sunglasses, without any kind of lotion making a chemical reaction, your body, you will instinctively go inside when you've had too much sun and instinctively lay out and get sun when you need it.
Yeah, we've been disconnected from our instincts. We don't act on instinct anymore, or very seldom do we. Another thing, you mentioned things like sunscreen and sunglasses, but also even like what are the effects that we are having with this connection between the sun and the human body when we're jumping in the shower twice a day and we're washing the oil off our skin. And we know that there's an important relationship there between the oil in our skin that interfaces with the world around us. So getting in and using harsh chemicals to take that oil layer off our skin, what impact is that having on our capacity to absorb and utilize light? Now, we are told that when you wash away the oil, it washes away the vitamin D. I mean, is this really what's going on? I'm not so sure. I think there's more to it.
Yeah.
I don't claim to know what the answer is. I don't think we'll ever know,
Yeah.
because we're not meant to know. We can invent stories to replace these theories that are disproven, but then we just end up back in the same place where now we've just got another incorrect story to explain a phenomena that we observe. And it may, in fact, be a dangerous thing to do because it leads us down the garden path again. And in another 100 years, we end up right back in the same spot. And this might confuse people, and they say, well, how on earth do we exist without knowing? It's like humans have existed in this realm for a really long time. I don't know how long. Some people say thousands of years. Some people say hundreds of thousands. I don't know how long, but we've existed here in harmony up until about even a century ago. We were living in relative harmony with nature. So we know how to do it. We've just been led astray. Something that I've been thinking about recently is there disease in nature? Because I don't think nature does disease.
No.
So if you look at all of the historical records, the journals, the entries of explorers, European explorers who were going out to all the different native tribes throughout the last 3, 4, 5 centuries, whenever they came in contact with the native people, they were blown away. And they reported that they never saw these native people with disease. Now, I'm not saying that people didn't get sick. Like, there could be instances where there's a rock slide and some heavy metals in the rock slide contaminate a local water supply and people get sick. Okay, so I'm not denying that there wasn't any disease, but I'm talking about chronic illness here: diabetes, cancer, heart disease, obesity, inflammatory diseases, autoimmune diseases, arthritis, dementia, Alzheimer's. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
They didn't have these diseases. So what that tells me is that disease that we see now, that is rampant in the 21st century, is likely to be a consequence of our modern toxic way of life. It's a man-made consequence. It's a man-made problem. So to answer that problem, we just have to get back to how we were living in relative harmony with nature, even a century ago. Not saying we have to go back and live like cavemen, but we need to look at ways where we can use, say, natural building materials, use natural clothing and fibers for our clothes, spend more time outside, get out in the sun, put your bare feet on the ground, don't spray poison on your food, eat local, fresh, seasonal food. Just these very basic, simple, fundamental things that if we make slight changes to, I think will have profound effects on worldwide health outcomes.
I mean, I know absolutely we will, because I have one rule, and that is you don't interfere with God or Mother Nature, whatever you want to call that. That's what we're talking about, that we don't understand, that miraculous synergy that's in everything. But, one of the things that I really wanted to point out was back to the oil on our skin. And when we use detergents, harsh detergents, we wash that off. I think we're also washing off this intuitive layer, this coating that we have that works synergistically also with our hair. When you wash detergents in your hair, you're cutting an antenna. So they've shown in World War II, when they had the trackers from the reservations come, and they would enlist them in the army, Well, they could track up until the point that they gave them the buzz cut. And the second they gave them the buzz cut, these guys could not track anymore. And so they did experiments where they would have one tracker that they would give a buzz cut to, and the other tracker kept his hair long. That guy could still track. Well, it's the same with us. We still have that within us. It's not that, anything's lost. It's just remembering ourselves back to being whole and not interfering. If we have a coating on our skin, it's for a reason. If you have an odor, something's wrong. You're consuming toxins, or, there's something putrefying inside your body that needs to be addressed. That's the way your body communicates with you. Same with anxiety or depression. It's a message that needs to be addressed, simply speaking. And then, of course, we get into what I call the playbook. The playbook is how they get us. It's from the womb, from conception, with the injections and the drugs of the mother and the amniocentesis and the ultrasound and everything else. They are pulling you into the system so that when you're born, what they want to do is, number one, separate you from God or your intuition, so that then you're off center. To pump you with fear, the what ifs. There's diseases everywhere. You can catch this horrible virus. You can catch this illness. What about polio? What about chicken pox now, or measles? You've got to inject your baby with these poisons so that they don't get these horrible diseases, so that now they can separate the mother from her intuition. Okay, I'll agree to that, because now I'm in a state of fear. I'm going to look to the authority to tell me what to put in my body or my child's body. So now we're ripe for the creation of diseases, because they know cradle to grave what you're worth: sick, diseased, diagnosed, and what you're worth well. And we're a threat to the system when we're well, when we're invigorated, when we're not calcified. Like my pineal gland is not calcified. I'm thinking. I'm actually thinking about everything. I'm not taking anything as fact. And then we get now to what we're talking about here today, which is, I think, sort of for those that really woke up in 2020, they fell into another rabbit hole with a hamster wheel. And those hamster wheels just get you spinning on the next thing. Well, the soils are depleted, so you have to supplement. You have parasites. They're spraying hydrogel and heavy metals in the chemtrails. You have to, do these harsh interfering chemicals inside the body to get rid of these things, or to change the state of who you are, because you are imperfect. But these snake oil con jobs will make you perfect. They'll get you to that health. They'll get you to that level that you need to be, because this is such a toxic, polluted world. So I really love, and I listened to that podcast over and over about the great vitamin fraud. But can you explain to my audience just how they came up with the vitamins?
Yeah, I can definitely get into that. I just thought I'd mention one other thing about the oil on our skin. So we are electromagnetic beings. We are light beings. And if you think about what electricity needs to function, it needs a medium to flow through. So in us, that is our water, and it's full of electrolytes and salts, which allows for the electricity to be conducted and to travel throughout the body at light speed. But it also needs an insulator. Now, our nervous system is made out of fat, because fat is a very good insulator. Our skin has oil in it, oil on it. It's insulating us for, and it has other purposes as well, because the body is not like, it doesn't have redundant systems. They have multifaceted functions. But this is another thing. And again, the oil on our hair. It is there to act as an insulator. What role is our hair really having? What are we doing when we're washing off the oil off our skin? We are under this impression that humans are dirty.
Right.
So we need to be washing our mouth and our face and our entire body multiple times a day, that we're dirty creatures. We need these harsh chemicals. It's like, no, we don't need any of that. A little bit of water is sufficient if you feel like you need to wash your body off. But yeah, you don't need to go and do all these other things, because we really don't know what effect that's actually having on us. So yeah, getting into the vitamins, probably the earliest idea that there was a vitamin deficiency disease came from this guy called Dr. James Lind. Now, this was in like 1776. I think he did some experiments on soldiers who had scurvy.
Yeah.
And he worked out that if he gave fresh fruits and vegetables to men with scurvy, their disease went away and they didn't die of the disease. Now, a lot of people point to that and go, he proved that it was vitamin C, but actually he didn't come to that conclusion. He actually thought that scurvy was caused by dampness on the vessels, on the ships, and that the fruits and vegetables protected against that effect of the dampness. So even though he's credited with being the father of discovering, that something in the fruit cured scurvy and it was vitamin C, he certainly didn't come to that conclusion. It was only later that this idea was really put forward and taken up as sort of proven fact. So fast forwarding to late 1800s, early 1900s, people like Casimir Funk and various other people like Dr. Eichmann, he was a Norwegian or Swedish doctor who was looking at the effects of diseases like beriberi, for example, which is a so-called deficiency in vitamin B1. And he found that in animals who ate processed grains, they developed neurological diseases and muscle wasting and these kinds of things. And he found that when he gave the whole grain, their disease was reversed. And even when he gave the missing part of the grain that was being fed to the chickens and ducks and other animals, so if they were just getting the endosperm, the white part of the rice, if he gave the bran layer, their disease was also reversed. And what he posited was that it wasn't a deficiency disease. He actually posited, along with many other men who discovered so-called these deficiency or the causes of these deficiency diseases, they were basically all in agreement that they were toxicity diseases, that there was some incomplete metabolism that was happening from eating these processed foods that was building up these metabolic waste products in the body, and it was actually causing toxicity and damage to the body that way. It wasn't necessarily a consequence of a deficiency. So when you gave them the other part of the food that was missing, the body now had everything it needed to complete that full metabolic process of that food. It could eliminate everything completely. There were no leftover bits rattling around inside the body, and you didn't get this so-called deficiency disease, which is actually a toxicity disease. Now, people hear this and go, well, we proved that it was a deficiency disease. We've got X, Y, Z evidence to demonstrate that this is the case. You only need to disprove the theory to show that any of the evidence that is there that appears to prove the theory is actually incorrect. That understanding is not correct. And this was done by Japanese researchers in the 1940s. So they basically disproved this idea that diseases like beriberi were deficiency diseases. So the way they did that was, this is World War II. There were mothers who were breastfeeding children, and the children got infantile beriberi, vitamin B1 deficiency, so-called. And what the Japanese doctors said was that we actually think it's toxin in the milk that's causing the disease, not a deficiency in B1. And basically all pediatricians and doctors in Japan at that time were in agreement that it was a toxicity disease. So what they did was that they took these children who had infantile beriberi, a so-called deficiency in B1, and then fed them exclusively on other foods that were also devoid of vitamin B1. So one of these foods was sweetened condensed milk. They literally took the children off the breast and then fed them just sweetened condensed milk, and within a number of days, their disease started to rapidly disappear. Now that flies in direct contrast with this idea that it's a deficiency disease, because if it was, their condition would not improve and would actually continue to get worse. So what that points to is that it may be a toxicity disease, that there was something toxic in the milk causing the problem. You stop drinking the milk, you're no longer ingesting the toxic metabolite, and the problem goes away. And there are many instances like this throughout history that sort of defy our current understanding of deficiency diseases. And it's for these reasons that I've got serious doubts about the current mainstream perspective on vitamins and vitamin replacement therapy to be used to correct deficiencies. I actually think the opposite is true. What we're witnessing is a toxicity disease arising from the processing, refining, and general meddling with the food supply. Now, it's a much easier thing to sell to people when they're under the belief or the impression that, oh, it's something lacking in my food. Well, that's not so bad. So it's okay. Just give me the thing that I'm lacking. Oh, here's the vitamin. Cool. Problem solved. Yeah. It's much more difficult to sell that to people when it's like, the real reason why you're getting sick is because we're meddling with your food. It's not being metabolized properly in your body. There's toxic levels of waste products building up inside you, and it's poisoning you. Right? It's a harder story to sell. The deficiency story is much easier. It's not something I'm being exposed to that's the problem. It's something that I'm not being exposed to. And now the pharmaceutical companies have got the answer. Oh, thank you so much, naturopath or nutritionist or doctor, for finding that deficiency and correcting it for me. And how may these vitamins work? Because obviously we see people getting better when we're providing vitamins and things. Well, how do drugs work? Drugs work by suppressing symptoms. The same way in which they create drugs is the exact same way that they create vitamins. They create them from petrochemicals. They add in a bunch of toxic chemical reagents to produce a substance that has an effect that suppresses the symptoms of the disease so it appears to go away. But it's actually not going away. It's just being masked. So, what a surprise that the companies that create and sell products that suppress diseases also create alternative products that supposedly correct deficiencies, but are actually working by suppressing disease.
So that, to me, looks like the allopathic model is the wolf in wolf's clothing, but the alternative is the wolf in sheep's clothing, because they're giving you the idea that, yes, it's the nutrient deficient soils. Be afraid, and that they've got lots of movies. Woody Harrelson is telling you about it, so you've got to trust it. It's got to be true. Now you're in lack. You need something outside of you, which, like you said, they've got the solution. Well, they're also spraying crops with folate. They're also, inundating the food with toxins and poisons. Then they get to pick the symptoms, call it the deficiency disease, get you to give your blood so that they can prove on this piece of paper, pharmaceutical funded piece of paper with pharmaceutical funded abnormal and normal ranges. That's in the disclaimer. But now they get to prove that you are deficient, and here's your miracle cure. Your vitamin C injections, those are the ones that really scare me. The infusions that they're doing with mega doses of vitamin C or vitamin B or B12 injections. So now you get that initial bloom of feeling good. So that's, I think, kind of the play. Get you in a state of fear. There's no way that you can be healthy just by eating out of your garden and drinking spring water. You'll get these deficiency diseases, which can lead to, and they'll tell you the terrifying diseases you can get, MS or Alzheimer's, which are just demyelination diseases. And there is no, when you look at a diagnosis, it's not, they plug you into a computer and say, oh, it's clearly Parkinson's. They just guess enough at the symptoms that you're presenting to get it into a diagnosis code so the insurance pays for it. But most everything that we're talking about that we're mentioning is the demyelination of basically our electrical system. So that can present itself in all sorts of different ways. And it creates more of the same narrative so that, yes, now I will listen to the good doctors, the functional medicine doctors somehow got a free pass, and the naturopaths somehow get the free pass that we still see symptom drug.
Yeah, that's the old same playbook, rinse and repeat. And yeah, the entire field of natural medicine has fallen prey to this, and it's sad to see. And even now when I talk to naturopaths about this, they can't understand what I'm trying to say, which is a shame because they once understood the concept of synergism and holism, and that they have forgotten about this now. So where this whole vitamin thing really went awry was that they had people with a disease, say scurvy. They gave them an orange and the scurvy went away. So they said, well, there must be a substance in the orange that is correcting this deficiency. So they started taking orange juice and lemon juice and juice of different fruits and mixing all kinds of toxic chemicals into that fruit juice and doing various different concoctions until they came up with a concoction that when they gave it to people with scurvy, their symptoms went away. Mm. They never once demonstrated that a thing called vitamin C exists in a fruit or a vegetable or a food. They never demonstrated that. What they did was they created a substance in a lab that had an effect that appeared to correct the symptoms of scurvy, but never truly corrected the disease itself. And even the guy who discovered vitamin C admits this in one of his original papers, that vitamin C, you can't separate it from the food. It's got to be the whole substance that is having the effect. So then what they've done is they've looked at this final substance that they've created in a lab, a man-made substance, and gone, this is the thing that's in your food. Now we will develop a commercial way of producing this in a mass scale where we can create hundreds and thousands of kilograms of this every year, sell it to the public under the guise of vitamin C, and people will take it hand over fist, pump their veins full of it, and they're none the wiser about how this stuff's actually made. So if you look at how these vitamins are synthesized, they're not coming from food. So your vitamin C is not someone taking 100 kilos of strawberries and then doing something to just take out the vitamin C from the strawberry. What they're doing is they're manufacturing this. They're taking genetically modified cornstarch and dextrose. They're adding in a bunch of toxic chemical reagents, heating it up, cooling it down, precipitating it, condensing it, doing all kinds of stuff to it to get a final substance that they claim is vitamin C, and then putting it in a capsule and saying, here it is. So it's essentially a drug is what it is. These are drugs in disguise. We have been... we've had the wool pulled over our eyes with this one. You can't correct you can't supplement your way out of a whole food deficiency. That's the truth of the matter. Now, whether or not the food is deficient because the soils are deficient, I mean, that's a completely separate issue. I don't think the soils are deficient at all. The soils can correct themselves when you allow nature to do its thing and get the heck out of the way. It's already a perfect process. But again, Mother Nature is used as a scapegoat to draw attention away from the true culprits. So it's like, oh, it's the soil's problem. The soil's the deficient stuff. You got to focus on what's not in the soil. Oh, and look, and big ag can now come in with all of the synthetic vitamins and stuff, and we can add it into the soil. It's like, hang on a second. You guys are poisoning the soil. You're raping and pillaging the soil. You're tilling the soil. You're growing monocrop 1,000-acre farms of the same thing. You're not cycling different crops through the fields. You're not putting animals on the fields. You're using toxic, chemically laden water to irrigate the soil. You're genetically modifying the plants that are growing on the soil. You're doing all of these other things, yet you still point to the deficient soil. So how about we stop spraying the food with poison? We start growing food the way we used to from a regenerative agricultural perspective, sustainable farming, permaculture farming, biodynamic farming, where we don't use any of this crap that we don't need. I think it's 100 billion kilograms of pesticides was sprayed on our food last year, and doctors are walking around scratching their head, oh, why is everybody sick? Let's just stop spraying the food with poison to start with.
Yeah.
And when we stop putting poison in and we start allowing nature to do what it does, the food is going to be whole. No human intervention required here. Mother Nature will do exactly what it needs to do. It's not the soil's fault. We've just interrupted that perfect cycle, and now we're bottlenecked at a certain part in that cycle. There's an issue that's coming from upstream that we're not dealing with, and we're only focusing at that bottleneck and going, here's the problem. It's like,
yeah,
no, you guys have got it completely wrong. It seems very simple and obvious in principle, but these issues will never be dealt with because the system relies on all of these things happening to keep it going. So as soon as we start realizing that, hey, when the soil is healthy and the environment is allowed to do what it needs to do, the plants are healthy, insects don't come along and attack healthy plants. When a plant doesn't have everything it needs, or it's toxic because you sprayed poison in it or whatever, it sends out signals to the insects to come and break the plant down because it's no longer viable. So people will say, how do we ever get there if we're not using pesticides? It's like, yeah, our thinking is defunct. It's deficient. It's back to front. The whole thing is perfect. We just got to stop meddling. We got to get out of the way, let nature do its thing, put a seed in the ground, give it some water, let the animals run free, and nature takes care of the rest.
Yeah, it takes care of the rest, and it's abundant. One plant gives you thousands of seeds. There is no lack.
Yeah, and even our understanding about disease is back to front too. Like everything, we need a course correction here. I think that's what we really need. Even looking at things like weeds. Oh, I've got weeds growing. I need to kill them. The weeds are actually there to correct the cycle.
Yeah,
they're there for a reason. Everything is when people walk outside and they see some land and they're like, oh, Mother Nature just looks so disorganized.
Right.
Like there's some land just near us that got cleared recently. They bring a bulldozer in and clear all the land back. And then over time you start seeing all these little plants popping up and you look at that and you go, well, what a mess. Look at all these weeds. It's not random. The things growing where they're growing didn't grow there just per chance, just randomly. They actually grew there for a very specific reason. There is order there. Those plants grew there because they were the exact thing that piece of or area of soil needed to correct itself. So the weeds are actually there to do a job. They're corrective. It's like bacteria or fungus or parasites. They're all there for corrective purposes.
It's almost like you're also describing cancer. You know, when we get cancer, it's a corrective process. It's encapsulating toxins or something that you've ingested it couldn't keep up with flushing out of the system. It's there for a reason, but we go in and puncture it and spread it around, puncture the encapsulated tumor, or do the biopsies, or radiate it, or give you more toxic drugs on top of the toxins.
100%.
Do you think we can get sick if we are not poisoned in some way?
No. I don't.
Yeah, I agree.
Nature doesn't do disease.
I agree with you.
There is no disease in nature. Disease is a man-made construct arising from trying to maintain a sick, toxic Western society. Like, you can't go in and start pulling oil out of the ground and creating petrochemicals and dumping all this stuff into the environment and expecting things to function normally. Like, humans were never intended to be exposed to this stuff. So we don't have mechanisms that are very good at detoxifying and getting rid of things that don't exist in nature. So that damages the body. It damages the tissue, and then the body has to try and correct for that, and we get symptoms, and we call a constellation of symptoms, a specific constellation of symptoms, a disease.
Right.
When in fact, the disease is the healing process. The damage has already been done. By the time you see the symptoms, the cause has already been and gone, right? Like, we're looking at the flames coming out of the house and the smoke billowing out of the house, and the firefighters there with the hoses and the fire trucks and the other emergency department personnel. They're the symptoms of the cause. So the cause might have been some faulty wiring or whatever. We're looking at the response and the symptoms, the smoke and the fire and the firemen, as the problem, but they're not the problem.
Right.
They're the answer to it. So this applies to things like cancer. Cancer is the downstream consequence of an upstream cause. It is a corrective response, as are all symptoms. Symptoms don't cause disease. Signs don't cause disease. When we exist in nature, all evidence points to or suggests that humans, animals, all living organisms are free of disease. So it's only when we start meddling around and we try to deviate and live in opposition to Mother Nature that these issues arise. We can only be as healthy as the environment that we exist in. So it's a direct reflection of our air quality, our food quality, the soil quality, the environment that we live in, the things that we're using for housing, what we're wearing on our body, synthetic fibers. I mean, it's all of these things that we need to point to and look at, which I believe are the problem. I mean, I'm even questioning now whether emotional causes or emotional traumas cause disease.
Right.
I'm looking at this because I'm thinking, if we blame an emotional trauma as a cause of disease, emotional traumas and traumatic events have been with us forever.
Yeah.
Yet we didn't see the natives of Australia walking around with diabetes and obesity and cancer and heart disease and depression and anxiety. Like, they just weren't, it wasn't there. They didn't even have words for these diseases. Yet they were exposed to very traumatic things. Like, living in nature can be hard.
Yeah.
So, witnessing family members being killed, the loss of children, like a tiger might come out of the bush and maul one of your friends to death.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not easy. So there were always traumatic events happening, yet it wasn't causing these diseases as we're sort of being told now. It's like, oh, this was a thing, this disease was a thing that happened to you when you were a child. blah, 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 blah. There's this story
Right.
here. I question that. I think what might be happening here is that we've confused the effect of an intervention to arrive at our understanding of what the cause is, which is backwards thinking. This is not logical thinking. So what I'm saying is, you go to a clinician and they say to you, oh, you've got this incurable or retractable disease or chronic illness. I want you to do XYZ steps. So let's take you back. Think to a time when you were young. When did a trauma happen? And the person connects with this. They go, oh, yeah, it was when I was 7. This thing happened. Oh, how did it make you feel? Oh, I felt XYZ emotion. Oh, okay, well, this might be the emotion that's now tethering you to this condition and it's manifesting as a physical disease. Let's release this emotion from you. And so you can overcome this traumatic event, this emotional trauma, and the condition will go away. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that that process isn't working. Of course it works. We see this happening time and time again. But what we've done is we've conflated the cause for the effect. So we've gone, oh, you identified that traumatic event made you feel angry. You've released the anger. Problem's gone away. It was the traumatic event that caused the problem. Was it? Was it really? I think we need to be careful here, because what we're then doing is laying blame back on nature, because there's always going to be traumatic events that happen in nature. I don't think that that's necessarily the cause of the problem. It might be our perception of that event that happens to us. Like, you could have 2 people on a roller coaster and one person goes, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing. I want to do it again. I can do it all day. It was just the best. And you have the person sitting next to them going, oh my God, that was horrible. Oh, I've got anxiety. I can never do it. So same ride.
Yeah.
Are exposed to the same environment, different perception.
Yeah.
It may
it's like, well, it's different meaning that they're assigning to it. And this, I think trauma, just to interject really quick, is the best way to keep you underneath a rabbit hole hamster wheel for the rest of your life, because there's going to be countless traumas that you suffered. And so, if something's going wrong in my life and I get to point back to the incident that happened when I was 6, well, anything from that point on that's gone wrong in my life, I'm going to be like a radar. Oh, that was the reason for that trauma. Let's go and release that with that person. It will never end. That cycle will never end. I'm always going to be under the victim medallion of some shock or some trauma. Like I was telling you before we started, I had a shock last night at 3:30 in the morning. And as I was hiking today, I just sort of screamed and did a little shake. And I knew right then and there, boom, gone. Kind of like when you see ducks fighting in a pond, and then they shake all their feathers. We're done. We don't need to have all this stuff stored and underneath yet another problem that needs an external solution.
Exactly. So, I don't have the answer here. I'm just looking at this and going, is it the emotional trauma that was the cause? There's things that point to it not being correct, that the theory is just not quite right. And I think we have to be careful, because as you said, if we attach to this, because it seems to be trendy now, it's like, oh, it's not anything that you're exposed to. It's not the poisons. It's not your diet. It's not blah, blah, blah. I do think we need to be careful. Now, I'm not saying that the interventions aren't working. Okay. But is it the emotional trauma that's the cause? Think about how many different therapies have been used over the centuries where people have reported remarkable results. Now, they weren't all dealing with the release of emotional traumas. There are instances in the literature of people reversing life-threatening cancers because they were under the belief or the assumption that they were receiving the treatment that was going to cure them, but they were just being given salt water.
It's
Now
the belief. I believe that, right? I mean, that is the crux of it.
That
What
is
I've
it.
seen in my 35 years, what I have seen people go through mainstream medicine and cancer treatments and get better because they believed it was going to heal them.
That's
It
the
wasn't,
magic word.
I have faith. I hope this is going to work. They knew it. They knew it like they knew the sun was coming up tomorrow. They knew it was going to work. I believe it, done.
That's what I think's going on here.
Yeah.
I think all of these different interventions that are being given to people, like for some people it works, for other people it doesn't work. It's like, okay, how could like a really famous homeopath treat so many people? In 60% of the cases, he gets remarkable results. But in 40%, no one seems like, how could he be so good with some and not for others? It's not anything the homeopath's doing. It's not the remedy he's giving. It's the individual. It's their belief in that therapy. So what I think's happening here is that these various different interventions, maybe it's like a faith healer, right? You go up on stage, you're at this big church, and it's a big, hoo-ha going on.
Yeah.
And you believe with every ounce of your fiber and being that this faith healer is going to heal you. Now, it's not the faith healer doing the healing. It's you. It's your belief. So what we're seeing here is everything that these different clinicians are doing is giving people a process to get them to activate the power of belief.
Yes.
Now, this is why it works for some and not others, because they didn't obviously believe in that process, right? They go to someone else who gives them a different treatment. Oh, there are no other treatments left. This is my last hope.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, now we start to get closer to this power of belief. And I'm going to believe that this is, because this is it. I've tried everything else. It must be the thing that works.
Or how much power have you put into that healer? Like, a lot of people love Joe Dispenza and they believe everything that he says. So that creates the medicine. You are the medicine, but you have such conviction in that healer or that homeopathic remedy or, fill in the blank, that you are now healed. But the caveat I'll throw in there is the studies that they've done with participants that they played cards with a stacked deck. And so after 10, 15 deals, the person finally got wise to it and said, hey, this is a stacked deck. But after 1 or 2 deals, they started showing signs that it was a stacked deck. Their adrenaline was released. Their pulse started going up. They started sweating. So the heart knows the truth. I think that's why I've never had homeopathic remedies work for me, because they are the stacked deck for me. I know deep down inside it's sugar pills, because if it worked, and not to knock homeopathy, I know people love it, but for me, I have that understanding, that belief of what it actually is.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work for me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. What you believe, like, we are incredibly powerful beings. And this works 2 ways. So it works that way with the placebo effect, but it also works the other way with the nocebo effect. Now, I'm not trying to hang crap on any modality or any intervention. If the results are there and people are getting better, fantastic. If the person finds a thing that works for them, fantastic. But they need to know that they're the ones that are healing themselves. It's not the therapy, it's not the intervention. The more convoluted and intricate the process, the more that person is going to believe that they get better. So if you think about like native shamanic medicine, what are they doing? You need to go and see the shaman. He's this guy who's had all this information passed down for centuries. He knows the exact chant, the exact words that he needs to utter for you to get better. And you go down and everyone's dancing around you and there's smoke blowing and all this sort of stuff. And it's a big event that's going on. The bigger the event, the more you believe in the power of this shaman who's going to utter the magic words that are going to cure you, well, the more likelihood that's going to have an effect. It's the same with placebo effects. Like, they know the more expensive that a pill is. If they leave the price tag on the pill,
Oh.
the more expensive it is, the better effect it has. If it's got a split line down the middle of the tablet, the better effect it has. If it looks shiny, if it's got shellac on the outside of the pill, the better effect it has. If it's a 2-part capsule that's multicolored, certain colors have different effects. If it's in a fancy package, it's more effective. If it's given in a certain setting by a doctor in a white coat who holds authority, it's more effective, right? So and this is all just placebo. This is sugar pill, right? So it's our perception and our belief that the more expensive pill is going to work, the one that looks better is more professionally made, it's of a higher quality, therefore it's going to have a better effect. Like, I even think to an extent that herbal medicine may work this way. Yeah. That we believe that the herb is the thing that has the effect, and therefore, and I'm not saying all of the effect is down to that, because we can ingest certain plants and things and we know that they have physiological responses in the body.
Right.
So I'm not saying 100% of this effect is down to it, but it works the other way with the nocebo effect. So if you don't believe that it's going to work, it won't. This also then leads into this idea of, if we're born into a society and from a very early age you're told this story that the world's a scary place, there's germs out there that are going to get you and they're going to infect you and they're going to kill you, you've got a 50% chance of getting cancer and dying in your lifetime, there's poisons everywhere, it's going to get you, it's a dangerous world, it's a toxic world, it's a poisonous world, everything's going to harm you, there's electromagnetic frequencies, and the artificial light's bad for you, and the clothes that you wear on your body is bad for you. Oh,
yeah,
right. So what's the story that you're telling yourself? I'm going to get sick and die. This is a bad world, this is a toxic world. Would we still be as negatively affected by those things if we were told a different story? If we were born into this world and the message that we were getting was, hey, there's stuff out there that might hurt you, it's a bit of an imperfect world, but you are truly powerful. You are impervious to these things. You don't get sick. And if you do, you can get better because you have everything inside you that will be able to protect you and reverse the damage that's been done using the power of your mind. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100%, but it may certainly mitigate that effect and the impact that these things are having that we're exposed to in our environment. The mind is incredibly powerful.
And it would also bring that power back to the individual so that intuitively, when you're in your power, you're not wearing toxic clothing, you're not putting toxic chemicals on your body, you're in that connected harmony with you and your soul. Like, you've linked up to your soul, so you are in that power, you are in alignment, then that's guiding you, not the other way around. You're in a state of fear, so you're letting the powers that be influence you, and that's always for their financial gain or power gain or some other gain that usually does not benefit you.
That's right. And look, I even think that all of this is far more simplistic to achieve than we are led to believe, to the point where my GP that is no longer practicing said something to me that really stuck with me. He said that in his experience, and he was practicing for, 50 years probably, he said to me that if he just sits and listens to his clients, more often than not, they just through conversation, without them even knowing it, just subconsciously, they will tell him what's wrong with them and what they need to do to heal themselves. So they know. So this then can be applied, I think, to our everyday lives. So if you're looking for guidance, if you're unsure about what to do in your life, if you're looking for purpose, if you're wondering about what you need to do to get better, is it possible, and I'm not saying again that this is how it is, I'm just putting it out there, is it possible that we can go outside, go into a quiet place, get into a state of relaxation, and ask ourselves the question, what's causing my problem? And listen to the answer. And don't second guess the answer that comes. Like just allow it to come. And the body will tell you, or whatever it is, the ether, God, nature, I don't know where that answer comes from. And then write that answer down. And then ask yourself the question, what do I need to do to heal myself? Or what is my purpose in life? And just listen to the answer. And it's a very subtle, gentle, it's not like blah, 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 speaking in your ear. It's like, it might be a feeling. It might be an emotion. It might be, you might actually hear the words in your head. But we're so distracted by everything that's out there and all these shiny things, and I want more, and it's a consumer lifestyle, and I've got to have the flashiest car, and I've got to work harder to pay the bills and all this sort of stuff. We're distracted so that we never have the time or the impetus to go outside, sit quietly and connect and ask these questions and get the answers, to connect with that innate knowledge that exists out there that I think we all have access to. So if that's the case, and we hear that answer, is it possible that just through the power of belief, when we go and do that thing that our body told us that we need to do, that we can create better health for ourselves? It's possible. It's an interesting thought at the very least.
But it's also bringing that back to within, and that's what my, the tagline for my business is, you are the medicine. I'm not selling anything. I can't sell anything to people, because then I would wonder, am I convincing them to buy this because I'm making money off of it? So I'm doing what you're saying, pointing people back to themselves. Listen to that inner voice within you. It's connecting back to the ability to hear your wisdom, because we all have it. We've been separated from it. So that is it. And the like you said, the voice or the message, it's soft. So that's why we have to get really, really, really quiet to hear the message. And what does everyone have now? They've got the headphones on. They've got, one constant distraction after the next. When they have a downtime, it's the scrolling on the phone. So there's no minute to hear that soul's voice. It is a beautiful, beautiful way to end it. I didn't think we were going to go to this level. And it is, when we started talking, we both wondered how, on this quest, how does the human body heal? And this is it. I mean, this is the solution, is no interference. I love what you said about the weeds too, because we get afraid, like, oh no, it's overgrown with weeds. Same with our bodies. Oh no, I've got a rash. Oh no, it's now you're in healing. The insult has happened. Now facilitate it, go to bed, drink some spring water. You're in the healing phase.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's, it's a great analogy, like that land that I was talking about.
That's it.
The damage was the bulldozer.
Yeah.
The symptoms that you're seeing, the weeds and the little things that are coming up, like that is Mother Nature's way of returning it back to a beautiful rainforest, right? Yes. It's just in that state of getting back to balance. So we can't look at that transition period from a bare earth to rainforest as a disease.
Right.
It's the corrective response. So you put it perfectly.
And don't interfere with that corrective response. Don't stop the corrective response. Don't go in there and add insult to injury and take out the weeds or spray it with pesticides or herbicides or, everything else that they're spraying things with. So where can people find you, Daniel Roytas?
My website is humanly.com, humanley.com. I'm on Facebook. I just post under my own name, Daniel Roytas, or on Telegram, Humanly. So t.me, Humanly, Humanley. They're the best places to get in contact with me. I also have a book called Can You Catch a Cold, which is, it was published a couple of months ago in March of 2024. Worked with a couple of very wonderful, beautiful souls, Dr. Sam and Mark Bailey, on this book, and a range of other people as well who I'm very indebted to. And that book basically challenges the idea that we can catch colds and flus and looks at all the evidence there to do with germ theory and contagion and transmission of infectious disease. So that's available on Amazon currently, and will also be available on Lulu in the coming months. An ebook is on the way, as is an audio book, which will be narrated by Dr. Sam Bailey herself.
Amazing. Yeah, I highly recommend getting the audiobooks. I love listening to what you have to say, because it takes the anxiety of the what ifs and everything that we're experiencing, this upheaval, and it brings it back to center. I feel centered again, of like, yes, I am right. Yes, my wisdom, my intuition is right about the shape of the earth, about the need for sunshine on my bare skin without lotions, the need for all of that. Trusting that inner voice. And the more we link up to that, the more powerful I feel, and the more my intuition has come back online. So thank you so much, Daniel, for being on the planet at the same time I am, for your wisdom, and for really just sharing how the human body heals itself when we trust the miraculous capacity without interference.
Thanks so much, Robin. It was a really nice experience talking with you, and to have a conversation with a like-minded soul. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing, and maybe we can have another conversation about this in the near future, because there's still obviously a lot of topics that we can cover and unpack for people. So I think a lot of people are confused about health, and actually it's a lot more simple than we realize. And as you said, once we take that fear and the confusion away and we come back to a center in ourselves, it really declutters that confusion, takes away all the cobwebs and all the noise, and we can really focus on what we need to focus on to achieve a really healthy and wonderful life.
That's it. Yeah. We have that time and attention now to spend building and creating, rather than falling into rabbit hole hamster wheels. I love it. Creating the new, what we both envision.
Yeah, we are powerful creators. We create our own reality. So we just got to focus on what we want. And this is what's happening now. We know what we don't want. We've been through the last 4 years, and that's obviously, we've been shown that type of world. It's like, you can have this, or you can have what's coming. And I believe that we're all creating that together now. So it's, I'm looking forward to the future.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And so thank you for giving us a brief taste of that vision, because that, I think that's so important, not to keep going on and doorknobbing you, but that is when we hold that vision, then we are in a state of light, and we are creating more of what we want, as opposed to the fear and the what ifs and, you know, this next thing that they're doing or planning. It's like, who cares? Starve the system. Don't give them your attention or your energy.
Exactly. You got it. You get it.
All right. Thank you, Daniel Roytas. And yes, I would love to do another podcast with you sometime soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Rob. Woke up pretty early this morning. I actually had a podcast scheduled at 6 o'clock, but I think there was a miscommunication with the time zone difference, and I was under the impression it was 2 o'clock.
Oh,
So I got up at 2 and then I couldn't get back to sleep. So I just stayed up. So sorry if I'm a little hoarse in the voice.
yeah. No, it must have been something in the air because 3 o'clock this morning, my dog goes running to the door, barking furiously. And somebody's like pounding on the door. Help me, help me. I peel back the shade that goes over my big glass door, and it's this elderly woman with blood
Oh my gosh.
pouring down her head.
Mm.
Nothing. I mean, it was so surreal.
What happened? Was she okay?
She had wandered from her house, but I heard the husband telling the paramedics, she's on 5 different medications. Amlodipine being one of them. And any patient I have that's on amlodipine, there is just disastrous effects. What the mainstream calls side effects from that drug. So,
wow. Well, I hope she's okay.
Yeah, I know that she's going to be okay, but from the look on the husband's face was, here we go again. I'm sure it wasn't like the first time that's happened.
Yeah. And I guess you didn't get back to sleep after that?
Exactly. So forgive my hoarse voice too.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing happen when I was a child, actually.
Really?
A lady came knocking on our side door, and I was very young at the time, but I think she was like stabbed by her husband or something. And there's this like naked lady that walks up to the big glass sliding door at the side of our house, and I'm sitting on the couch, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that was very confronting. It's not an easy thing to deal with when you're faced with that kind of thing at your house. So yeah, I hope you're all right.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with German new medicine?
Yeah.
Like the shock. It felt that was one of the first things I was thinking when I saw it. It was so shocking. And I'm a nurse. I mean, I've worked in psychiatric hospitals. This isn't something that you would think I would be shocked with, but it was just the time of night.
Yeah.
Waking up from a deep sleep and then she was talking gibberish too. It wasn't like it was help me, I fell down. It was, she was really out of it. And so.
Yeah, not an easy thing to deal with, but sounds like she went to the right place.
She went to the right place, yeah. Go figure. Of all the places to go to, there she was.
That's right.
Well, I'll be respectful of your time. Oh, sorry.
What's that?
I was just going to say I'll be respectful of your time because I know.
Hey, no problems.
Okay. We'll try to keep it at about an hour.
Sounds good.
And then we'll just keep it conversational because when I heard your podcast, the Great Vitamin Fraud, I was like, thank God, finally somebody else is saying it. Because I felt like the only one, you're trying to warn people from jumping off this cliff. And that's been the thing that I've been the most attacked on.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sacred cow for the natural medicine industry. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if they'll ever let go of that. I've faced a lot of ridicule myself and went from being the golden boy to the black sheep. So I'll just keep putting the information out there, and whoever's ready to hear it, I guess they'll do with that information what they will. But those who aren't ready, can't help them.
Can't help them. You can lead a horse to water, or just like you said, put the information out